Good evening, T. How's it going? Welcome to our podcast as subscribed. I'm very excited to have you here as a guest today in our humble podcast where we speak with the best founders in the world, like yourself. So, how's it going? And what brought you here today?
Gosh, what an introduction. That makes me feel pretty lovely. Yeah, it's a nice day in Melbourne today, nice and rainy. But yeah, I really enjoyed our chat when we got to meet a couple of weeks ago. So I was looking forward to getting to nerd out together a bit more.
Okay, yeah, nice. Yeah, I mean, obviously, besides me writing all the founders in the world and not giving them a chance to not say no to come to this podcast, I appreciate you took the time out of your busy calendar. So yeah, tell us about yourself and your background. People are saying you built this next generation data analyst app. It's called WhyHive. So what's it about, and what is your role in that?
Sure. So I'm one of the co-founders at WhyHive. My name's T, by the way. Nice to meet anyone who might be listening to this. My pronouns are they, them. My co-founder, Matt Cohen, is building it with me alongside Simon Grant, who's our engineer. We're a very small team of 3, and we came across the problem when we were working in the not-for-profit sector. And I'd just come out of a maths and philosophy degree, of all things, and really wanted to work on problems that I care about a lot. And I noticed when I was working in the not-for-profit sector that it was really hard for people to analyze data. And yet they were trying to do awesome stuff with data. They were trying to change the world and change people's minds and do really cool stuff. So it seemed really unfair that they couldn't analyze data easily. So yeah, that's kind of what started the journey.
That's interesting. So you came out of university, graduated, were one of the best people, also what I can see on your LinkedIn from university, got all the awards and then decided to create a company. That's impressive.
That's very generous. I feel like we have GPAs in Australia. Do you have GPAs over there? Or maybe it's called something else.
In average grade stuff,
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, my grades were not that good. They were fine. I got through, but I think I was really eager to try and do stuff outside of class. Don't get me wrong, I love learning. I'd rock up to just random lectures. It's free learning, you know. But then I really wanted to sink my teeth into research and into getting out into industry and things like that. So yeah.
I mean, I was talking with a founder friend about it. He's much more successful than me. And he basically said, yeah, well, maybe the best founders are not the best students, employees, but they cannot be terrible employees or students, but they find ways on getting around and doing things quick.
Yeah, I gotta say, one of my proudest achievements at uni was probably getting out of a usually mandatory unit in science communication. So that's probably my proudest achievement.
Well done. Well done. I'm definitely a terrible employee at this point in my life. I was better when I was younger. But I was a very good student, so I tried to get the best grades possible. But only because I set it as a goal. And then I had a different goal. Earlier, I was a very bad high school student, so I was kind of optimizing for good grades, not necessarily learning the right things, but just getting good grades. It was kind of a game for me. But yeah, on the other hand, I was not a great employee all the time. So now I think I'm an okay entrepreneur. I'm alive. Like you know, keep going on. And you're more than alive. You actually just closed your recent round of funding. So congrats on that. And so do you want to tell us about that, on how this happened? And did you get the funding round immediately when you had it year out of uni and they're like, hey, T, here is money, build your dream company? Was it
go build your dream, T? Yeah, it wasn't quite like that. What a time. But I love that spirit. Yeah, we actually closed the round in 2023. So we
That's
wanted
a hard time to raise money, right?
Yep, it was a year. It was a year. But yeah, we're pretty stoked to get the result that we did. And then we really wanted to wait until there was a free version of the product ready for people to try out until we did any PR around it. So we finally announced the raise only recently, but we've had the money for a while. So yeah, we were a bit sneaky.
Yeah, I don't think it's sneaky. It's just strategic. A lot of companies do that. I learned only after joining the entrepreneurial side of things that, okay, there's no rules in startup land. Everyone does what they want in a way. Okay, so I want to speak about your motivation as a founder. So first, you built a data company, WhyHive, to solve solve a big problem for nonprofits, but also what fascinates you about data, because I'm also fascinated by data, like you. Objectively, I'm not as smart as you in data, but I love it. I love creating graphs, speaking to data with SQL. I was obsessed in Facebook during my time there, or Met it's called now. Um, I personally love the clarity of answers you get. What is and the visualization and
Yeah, I think I could tell you a little story about how we pivoted, which kind of captures what I most love about data, which I think is about the clarity that you've described, particularly in being able to make decisions. But I think I used to think that the magic of data was in the really, really fancy stuff, like the machine learning, the clustering analysis, all that. But then something happened where back when we were working in the previous kind of version of the business, which was this data consulting social enterprise, we did a low bono project where I'm not sure if low bono is the term that you tend to use over there, but when you basically don't charge as much money to an impact-based organization. So we did a project where we were doing some clustering analysis on their most valuable customers, and we gave them a report back. And then 3 months later, we came back to them and said, how did that go? We spent so much effort together. What kind of decisions have you made? And they kind of looked at each other a little bit and then said, actually, it's just sat on the shelf. But then they said, we've actually got this Shopify download that's sitting in a CSV file of our sales and our different t-shirt colors. And actually, we just need to know what color of t-shirt is selling the best, because if we can do that, we'll be data-driven in the sense that we'll buy that color of t-shirt, and then
I love
that'll
that.
be,
It's such a big challenge for data scientists to solve. So how do you do that?
Yeah, it's wild, right? I think being data
It was
driven.
sarcastic,
So
but it's kind of funny how simple the problems can be and how impactful you. Yeah, it's amazing. I love it.
yeah, and so that really set us on this path because I was asking them why don't you know how to do that? That seems like a pretty simple thing to do, but they said they'd been trying to learn Tableau for 3 days to no avail. And so then we were like, okay, someone needs to build something like Canva, but for data, and maybe it could be us. So then we pivoted.
That's nice. Congrats. I love the story. I think you mentioned it the last time. You touched on it. Yeah, it's amazing how impactful small things can have on a small, obvious problems for some people who are trained are very difficult for people who don't know it. Yeah, that's fantastic. And creating a product around it.
Thanks.
Yeah, and what motivated you to become a founder? I mean, you could have joined a company like Canva. They're hiring right now for head of data, as well. So you could go there and work as head of data probably. So why are you working as a founder? Why do you choose suffering over comfort?
Why do you choose suffering? That's so funny. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, when you're growing up and some people have families that are all doctors or they're all teachers or something like that. Growing up, I kind of thought that my family wasn't like that. I thought that we were just kind of a mixed bag. But then I realized actually we're pretty much all entrepreneurs and just in different ways. My dad runs a little art community down in Torquay, and I know that you know about Torquay, which is hilarious.
Yes.
Little surf town. And my mum had a terracotta business where she would make all kinds of different things. And I think just growing up around small businesses, I was really fascinated by it. And only a couple of weeks ago, my dad reflected back to me that when I was super young, I want to say 9 or something like that, and we were having a bunch of families together having a garage sale. Apparently, I wanted to charge my kid friends like 50 cents a ride on the little lawnmower tractor thing that we had. And just like, I would just take them around on this little hay bale ride and charge them like 50 cents, which apparently was like slightly controversial at the time. But I think I've just always been fascinated by it. And I really like the creativity and autonomy and just being able to think about how like solving gnarly problems maps onto a business model. I guess from the maths and philosophy background, kind of like tearing that apart, it just really interests me in general.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of studies around it that predict people become entrepreneur who grew up with others, and
Makes sense.
it's the same for me. So my mom is like this artist working on projects and being employed, and so is my uncle and my family members, which I grew up around. And so it feels more normal. But I see also with my friends who didn't grow up that way with their parents, they really prefer the corporate environment. And for me, since my mom remarried and then she had a doctor as her husband, my stepfather is like my father later. For me, I was always feeling like I need to have a secure job to blend in, but it was never in my DNA. I think the DNA was always being a founder. The grass is actually greener on the other side. So I feel like, it has a profound impact, a positive impact of my life working as a founder now, even though it's very hard. So must be the same for you, I guess, that you pick suffering.
Yeah, you just learn so much about yourself, you know?
What?
You just like learn so much about yourself as well, don't you find?
Yeah, I think there's not a lot of places to hide.
No. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot of places to hide. I mean, what did you learn about yourself as a founder, of what you think, or as a person you thought you hadn't had the opportunity to learn if you were in a company? Is there anything that you think you learned? I have something, I guess, but what is it for you?
Yeah. Gosh, so many things. Yeah, I think trying to think like of like just one or two, but like one that comes to mind is just about conviction. I think if you're working in a bigger company, you sort of don't have to. Well, I suppose I wouldn't know because I haven't experienced working in a big company, but I think really having to put your ideas on the line and have really strong conviction in something that you want to build, to the extent where you're willing to risk like your time or your money or this or that on it. I think in a big corporate, like sometimes it sounds like you're kind of doing that like with a team, which would also be really rewarding in its own way. But I think as founders, it's often like, one or two people, maybe three, four max, kind of get together and they go like, no, we're gonna do this and we're gonna back ourselves in a way that I think like your conviction is really, really tested in a way that I've found like personally super rewarding, particularly when it's when something works as well. Like when you build something that people go, actually, this is making my life better. It just feels amazing. So yeah, what's your one?
It's my one. I mean, to me, I care much less what other people think about me. I think in a place with many people, it's very important to understand the social dynamics and to progress, or not to progress, to not be killed career-wise. Like if you don't, you say play the game or politics, but in reality, it's like there's a lot of people, you just will be moved out of the system. Cam from Canada describe it like a bad organ that needs to be removed.
Bad organ.
I don't see it. I mean, it's kind of like that, but I think it's just there's a lot of people there, and they all have different ideas, and the best ideas don't win. It's not how it works. They can, but it's about the process and how it evolves. And I think when I started working as an entrepreneur, I thought I need to get a lot of validation from VCs about the idea, and because I thought that's how it is. But I'm starting to realize now that it's still important, like to work with investors and keep them up to date. But the customer and what you do and your own conviction is more important. So very often I would now, if I feel like it, I would disagree with investors on the spot if I think like they have no idea what they're talking about my business. And very often they're right, and very often I'm wrong, But I think just it's okay to disagree and share your own views, because we as founders know the business best, and that's something I learned, and I really enjoy that I can have genuine thought about things. And for example, we killed our subscription management app, and it was not because all the investors were killed. We invested. All the investors told me it's not going to work. That was not the reason. The reason was we actually put our best foot forward to test the hypothesis through. And then we learned it. But at this point, we knew, okay, we did everything we could. It's too hard right now with the resources we have, so we're not going to do it. But we didn't adjust it before we were certain that this is the wrong thing to focus or invest on. And that's very rewarding, that we actually figuring out for yourself on where you have to listen, where you have to push back either mentally or also directly with people. But that takes a time to train, because in a corporate world, it's not what makes you succeed necessarily. You need to be more nuanced and stuff like that.
That resonates for sure, just in the sense of I really value my relationships and want people around me to be happy. And so the idea of really directly challenging folks, I think is a real growth point for me. And that's also been really interesting to watch over the last couple of years, having investor relationships. I think there's been awesome points of being challenged. There's been awesome points in feeling like we're able to also challenge back. And I think the thing that has emerged, everyone tells you that you've really got good investors in your corner and that you have to have good relationships with them, and everyone says it. And I guess there's probably still temptation for founders sometimes to just kind of take any money, because I get it, it's really hard. But just seeing the last year more, the last year and a half kind of play out, and getting different bits of advice from investors and being on that journey together, it's counted for so much to just work with good people,
Yeah, that's 100%. Who are your investors, by the way?
And so Scalata Ventures led, and then we've got a bunch of awesome people on the cap table. We've got the co-founders from Linktree. We've got Dom Pym, who is one of the founders of Artbank, which is an Australian kind of neo bank, I suppose you could say, very popular with under 35s. And then also one of the co-founders called John from Culture Amp as well.
I mean, Scalata, they're great people. I have to say, they're very helpful and always very friendly. They didn't like our subscription management app idea though, so they didn't like it, or they were not convicted. But they're great. So are the other investors. That's awesome. Congrats on that.
Thanks. Yeah, feeling that. Do you mind if I talk a bit more about Scalata for a second?
Sure, go ahead. Yes, please. Yeah. What do you like about them?
Yeah, I think it's really special when you meet an investor where they just get it from the first coffee. And Tom Smalley, did you meet Tom during your?
I did, indeed, yeah.
Yeah. First of all, just terrifying in terms of smartness. Aside from, I think
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, he's just locked on, but it was amazing. We met in Fitzroy North for a coffee, and it was half an hour of just really intense chats. It's just this assumption, then this assumption, and then therefore this, and blah, 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 blah. And then he kind of walked away from it I want to do this. And then in the following months, just made it happen. And I think when someone just really gets it and they want to fight for you as founders and for the deal to happen, it's really special. And then when I met the rest of the team, there's just so much integrity in terms of how they approach deals and how they approach founders. And I love the classic, investor due diligence of you ask founders about how the relationships go when things go wrong as well. And it's nice when you get good reviews, even in those kinds of contexts. So anyway, big love to
That's
Scalata.
awesome. That's great to hear. So for us, I think even though we haven't raised, Scalata is one of the very supportive investors in Australia. I'm speaking about the Australian ecosystem. The
Yeah.
second one is, to my surprise, I didn't expect a lot, was really ORF Ventures.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they
Cool.
have been incredible, helpful, and also Rampersad.
Cool.
Um,
Okay.
and yeah, like we didn't know. Obviously, we went also to Airtree and Blackbird, and these they are also great. But I think
Yeah.
I think just the size of the funds make it potentially more challenging.
Yeah.
Like it's more like a bigger fund. But I think for these funds, the ones I mentioned, they are really also helpful, and I was very surprised. Like I had very low expectations. I had high expectations from the bigger funds. And that was my
Mm.
problem. I think I should, like, always having low expectations is better. It's also learning. But yeah, that was really great. And Scalata, I wasn't able to get to know them that well. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think the next Blackbirds, the next Airtrees are the ones that probably the good funds who really need to fight to get the best companies in. So you potentially get like a better service and better relation. Like it's easier. But yeah, I'm making here assumptions, so please, I hope maybe I take the section out. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, just a random like I don't know if this counts as a plug or not, but I think it's I think genuinely interesting in terms of just like founder data to have. But we just straight up put our raised data in the app. So like we have all the information about like it's de-identified, but like how many people we met with, like the reasons they passed, all kinds of stuff like that. So if there's any founders who want to nerd out about particularly pre-seed raising data in Australia, you can go check it out. But I'd be really curious to maybe it's worth doing a survey or something like that about founders' experiences, particularly in Australia, and raising. I wonder how it's changed in the last couple of years, but just how they relate to investors, like what the main challenges are, and like what do they really value when it comes to those kinds of relationships. Because it's really refreshing, I think, having a conversation with you about this, and also being able to be like to observe what's not good as well as what's good. Because there's of course like a lot of
It's very individual, right? As well, like
yeah yeah
your experiences are different to mine, and then there's a lot of awesome people from Canva who raised with Blackbird and Airtree and these other companies. So I
yeah
think that the TLDR for me, my personal TLDR is it's very different. No person is the same raising. So even if everyone comes from Canada, everyone is different, and everyone studied math, everyone is different. So, but yeah, I would be interested to see that as well, because I only see these charts from the VCs, but I would love to see as well the landscape from something like that. So I'm definitely gonna check it out. Another reason to try the product.
well,
WhyHive.com. Yeah. Now, how did you launch your product? I mean, you spoke about it briefly, but who were the first customers you acquired, and how did you acquire them? You don't have to share exactly, but more like what type of customer and yeah.
yeah, no, I'm happy to share exactly. This is probably like it was some good founder learning for this, but we'd been not charging our users when we were iterating the product, and then had a really good chat with Rove from Scalata, and we had lunch, and he was just like, "Why are you not charging people? Just do it. Just charge them." And so I walked into the next meeting that I had, which was with Share the Dignity, which is a amazing charity that works on looking at period poverty and how to try and alleviate that in Australia. And I just asked them whether they'd be up for paying for the app, and they were like, "Yeah." And then we had our first customer, which was really cool. But I'm so proud of working with them because they've recently done a 150,000 person survey about period poverty in Australia, and found some amazing stats that that ended up getting sent to the Guardian and all that sort of thing. And they
Seriously, that's
yeah,
amazing.
and
That's
they have this
amazing.
Yeah, they have this like challenge where the whole team is not technical and they all the time need to give insights to like politicians, to media, things like that. And so now, yeah, like very regularly the team's going in there and like getting like graphs and stats and things like that and just like shipping them off to media and to politicians. And so that like low key made me a bit emotional when I saw that happening. It was just like, that's the dream. This is what we were trying to do, you know? So it's been good.
That's impressive. Yeah, I have no experience with the impact of data like that, but I heard about it and I know that can work right. This company is called Flourish, and they
Yeah.
embed also their things in. It's not really related. Yeah, data is a powerful storyteller, and if you make it easy for the users, it can be quite impactful on either side of how you use data, because correlation is not always causation. So
Yeah.
that's um yeah. So that's a nice story. And is there anything you wish you had done differently, like monetizing earlier from day one? Or also, I think a right answer to that is to say, no, actually it was the way it is, because that's destiny, you know, sometimes it is like this. Or is there anything you wish you had done differently?
That's I mean, you're talking to a philosophy major here, so I feel like the whole like free will destiny thing is like, you know, a bit of a rabbit hole, but we can do that another time. But I think like, yeah, if I think about monetization, one of the tricky things about raising pre-seed, at least in Australia, is that I heard somewhere if you have no numbers, that's better than having some numbers, because those some numbers need to be kind of amazing, or nothing, basically. So maybe yeah, a better way to say that would be you either need to have amazing numbers or no numbers in order to be raising pre-seed. And
Yeah.
I think we wanted to raise both pre-revenue and pre-product because we knew it was going to take a long time to be able to build a UI that was good enough to be able to give users an awesome experience and then, you know, ask them to pay. And yet also I think there's a lot of value in the lean startup model in terms of just like testing, like what is it that people will pay for. That being said, we also validated that people would be willing to pay for relatively basic insights during our consulting days. So I think, yeah, I think it probably wouldn't have made sense for us to monetize like super, super early. But I think that it made sense when Ro was like, go charge some people some money. I think it was like a really important.
It was the right moment. So it was actually good advice. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, I think honestly, like trying to figure out monetization around things like payment gates, and like what are the most valuable things that users want. Like that's still a challenge for us and still something we're going to be working on, no doubt, for a while. I don't know if a founder is ever not working on that, to be fair, but it's definitely something we're focusing on.
Yeah. Yeah. We monetized very early, and we learned people are not paying unsubscribe. Yeah, but that was actually good insight, because we thought they were not paying because the product is not good enough, and then we made it much better. And then we realized, okay, they're not paying because we cannot activate them, and in order to activate them, it's gonna take a million years. So we're not gonna do that anymore. We're gonna focus on another part of the business. Yeah. So we were good in monetizing early, but we got different learnings from it. So if you ever want to have insights on our monetization learnings, also from Canva and our business, and we work with other startups too. But pricing, let me know. Like, we do that anytime.
Yeah.
Free.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So yeah, I mean, we're almost at the end of our podcast here. So I wanted to know, what do you really love about Subscribed, the marketplace, the future, next generation of software companies being found by people? What do you like about it? Or is the one feature request you have for us to bring in to help companies like yours, but also end users?
Totally. I mean, when we spoke about the like Rotten Tomatoes, but for like SaaS, that really spoke to me, because I think when I'm looking for subscription products, like for my business, it's really hard to figure out where to look for the best reviews to be able to get reliable information about what we should be investing in. And also it's really hard to collate information into one place for the purposes of comparison and things like that. So like the idea of having like a trusted organization or a trusted voice to be able to different softwares in the same kind of way that you have Rotten Tomatoes. Like I definitely find that if I'm looking for a movie, I'm much more likely to trust Rotten Tomatoes than like IMDb or something like that. So yeah, I think that's really exciting. And I guess for us in terms of our business, I've found that something that tends to be part of our like sales cycle, or I mean it feels weird talking about that with a free product that's got, you know, paid tiers on top of it. But essentially when I'm talking to people about why they should give our app a crack and why they should give us feedback to help us grow, a lot of that is in the story. Like it's in like why we're doing it and what kind of impact we want to have by helping to make data easier for people to work with. And that's something that's really hard to capture in just like a random review that someone might see online. And so if you can help like tell the story behind products, it means that for companies where the story is actually kind of part of the value proposition, then that can come into it in a much deeper way. So I think that's something that I'm excited about. And maybe my feature request would be something about, I'm not sure if you already do this, but like something where the founders can talk about the kind of impact that they want to see with the product. Or maybe, I mean, it would be pretty cool for you to have like an independent rating of how impactful the different companies really are. Because I think everyone like talks about it to a certain extent. Like there's often like at least a pet theory about how your app is going to change the world, you know, which is something that's really fun about being in the startup landscape. But if you could come in and say, like, this is what we think based on what we've seen, that would be cool too.
Yeah. You made me think. This was like really good feedback. So
Nice.
I'm gonna definitely follow up on that. This is very great feedback. I mean, we hope that we can create a really high integrity marketplace, because AI can help us review products much more efficient than humans. So it reminds me of the book Homo Deus and Homo Sapiens, where you basically control you create the policies together with a jury of experts, and then this AI thing executes it. And that's how we see it. So I think we see it as a little bit like you said, like as jury enabled, and then it basically applies the policies of the ratings for all these companies. And always in the beginning, it can be very generic, but eventually it can be broken down by sector and industry, and very helpful. And then I hope that it's going to be that cost efficient that all SaaS and software companies in the world can request changes. So you could request changes to, you disagree this rating on this reason, and then to that you help this model learn and also give feedback to the jury. But ultimately, I think it needs to be, since my mom is an artist, I believe it needs to be also done by people who understand the craft as well. So I think it needs to be a mix between experts and the people. So that's kind of my dream state, and I think it doesn't happen. I think most reviews are poorly people driven, and then it forces SaaS companies to try to influence it in a way so the reviews look better. And I think that's not a good state we are in. We want, like, that's one thing we want to change, because reviews are so important and everyone knows they're fake. So yeah, that's
funny.
that's kind of at least what I think. Anyone challenge me on that, but yeah, that's what I really think. Truly, that reviews are fake.
Yeah, it's good to know what you really think.
I don't know. Maybe I'm probably wrong about that. I will change my mind later, but yeah.
Yeah,
So
I had a thought about that.
yeah,
Not reviews, but your product, if you don't mind.
yeah, sure.
I was thinking that if in the world where you've got people able to basically challenge their review and then needing to update the process in some way to be able to cater to that. Like, I think it sounds like a fair sort of process, but also
reconnecting.
Oh,
be right back. We're waiting for T to reconnect to our audio and live stream. T, are you back?
am I back?
Yeah, you're back. You're back now. Okay, great. Yeah.
Okay. I was just gonna take a swing at, I guess, this idea of people being able to challenge their scores, because I don't know, I think like something that I don't know how it works with Rotten Tomatoes, but something that I really like about the idea of Rotten Tomatoes is that it's independent and you can't buy it, you can't influence it, you just have to make a really good movie, you know. And in the same way, I think the idea of just needing to make a really good app, like even as someone making an app that we want to be really good, I would prefer to know if the rating in a certain area is really low and then just make it better, rather than being able to like challenge why it should be, like the criteria should change or something like that. But yeah, that's maybe a little bit brutal of me. Maybe it's my inner data analyst, but I want it to be like,
yeah,
you know.
I agree with you in that it should be yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I agree on that it should be a predetermined set of framework to rate consistently rather than changing. But it's also hard because a design company is very different to a data company on what matters. You know, design you do every day, data you do once a month, and it needs to work, whereas design can evolve. We're thinking about these nuances, but we're definitely going to start with a generic approach, and then probably people will, or software companies will start hating on us, and then we're going to change and adjust it based on industry to make sure they start loving what we do. That's the goal. But you spoke about the purpose of a product, and what is the end vision for your product? What's the big thing, the dream state, what will you solve? I mean, Canva for data is good, but what if you're going to be bigger than Canva? What will you become?
Such a good question.
Like NVIDIA for data, for example, right now.
Yeah, wow. I think, yeah, I'm kind of a strange founder in some ways, in that I didn't get into startups to become a startup founder. Like, that wasn't my goal. I wasn't like, I want that to be my career. I just really wanted to see this problem solved. And this has been like the journey that I've been on pretty much since I got out of uni. And so I think in terms of where I want to see the company go, I think for every person like Rochelle, who is running Share the Dignity and has like a simple data set and really needs simple insights to be able to do both like impactful work, but also like impactful business work. I think it's really, it's really important to me that they have a solution that will enable them to do that. So I think what we've built now, like, I'm really proud of, and it solves the problem to a certain extent. But there's a lot more we can do in terms of the richness of the insights that we can provide, the kind of integrations that we can have with different platforms. We don't want to be, everything to everyone. We know that there are already great platforms that can integrate with, like, Shopify and stuff like that. But for data exploration, rather than for insights that are kind of pre-baked into a dashboard or something like that, it's still such a hard problem. And we also know that ChatGPT doesn't solve it because the insights are so often hallucinated. So I think that's plenty of complexity to go after.
Yeah.
I think there is a future in which we're starting to pose a bit of a challenge to the Tableaus and Power BIs of the world, because we've started to have feedback from analysts saying, like, I would have done this in Tableau, but like, it's just going to be so much faster if I do it in WhyHive. Like, why wouldn't I do that? And so I think that's going to become an interesting space, like whether or not we start to go into the sort of VI territory. And I'm not sure about that yet. But I think from the start, for me, it's been about the impact on the users, and so will be continued to be directed by the users.
Yeah. I love that. For me, it is, I think I don't have a choice. I just have to do it. I don't want to be a startup founder, but I just have to do it.
Yeah, it's a
And
bit
I
like
want to
that.
solve a problem that, it's so inspiring to be like you. Like very often I wish I were more like you, that you deeply, deeply care about something. And I think that's also what everyone wants to hear. But I do care about, and I can't. I do care about it, but I care about it more like, okay, how can we make this bigger? How can we solve, like, I'm thinking more like as a puzzle, and you really think about like, how do you solve a problem for society? And then for me, it happens that, okay, actually this is a problem for society in that aspect, but it's more an effect, and I care about it as well. So I think I'm a good human most of the time, but I'm not like you. So it also makes me sad about myself. Like, why can't I be not like T? Yeah, hearing like that. Yeah.
There's ones, right? Like
Yeah.
I think, yeah, like being, I've heard something like, I can't quite remember the quote, something along the lines of be passionate about the problem but agnostic about the solution. I think that makes a lot of sense. And also I respect when founders are passionate about running businesses well and independently, and then they pivot, like, just with the science of the lean startup model as well, and they pivot a lot. Like there's been some really big pivots in the Scalata portfolio
Oh,
with
yeah,
people,
really?
yeah, which has been amazing. Like one company pivoted like 6 times or something like that in, I can't remember how long it was, something like maybe like a year and a half, but don't quote me on that. So anyway, I think there's a real art to just like being a startup founder in the business sense, and there's a lot of beauty to that as well, I think.
Yeah.
And I think pairing that with problems that we care about is where a lot of magic happens. And it sounds like, when I hear you talk about your app, that's something that you're passionate about as well, which is really cool. So yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for the compliments, but I give it back to you too. Same thing. And yeah, so one thing that people should do with your app after this podcast or while listening to it, what is it? I already know it, but I wanted to bring you on the spot because we want people to use WhyHive.com and upload their CSV and analyze data. Is that right?
Yeah. Go analyze
And
some
then
data.
give you feedback.
Yeah, tell us what you want. And also, like, random shout out, but I've been having some conversations recently where people have been requesting API access, which is another potential pathway that I find interesting, that I would like to explore a little bit more. It's not necessarily something that I saw for the roadmap initially, but yeah, if you want to talk about that with me, maybe message me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how should people give you and or Matt feedback directly on LinkedIn? Is this a good channel?
Kind of anything. But
Anything, yeah.
a
Okay.
couple channels is like, yeah, we've got a Slack community. We have like a feedback button in the app that can take you to a little type form. LinkedIn's also good. We love data. We'll take it. It's great.
Okay, nice. So great. So everyone like try out WhyHive and test their CSV files. I will do it as well after this call with all the data we have. Which also brings me to the point, you're totally secure and privacy, what I can see. So you validate a lot. So you're not going to share the data with anyone and all of that, right?
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of the users, particularly in spaces like research, have been working with us, because we've got like data stored in Australia, which is important for a lot of Australian companies. And then, yeah, we've got a bunch of information on our website about the kind of protections that we put in place. But if you really want to nerd out, then you can also check out the terms and conditions, privacy policy, or just like message me for more info. But yeah.
I saw that on your website, so I thought it's worth calling out that you particularly care about that. That's awesome. Okay, so thank you, T, for your time. And yeah, looking forward to the next podcast, hopefully with a great guest like yourself. And thank you, everyone.
Have a good night.